Hi, my name's Scott the Miniature Maniac, and today we're doing it live again. What up, Mini family? Some time ago, I made a video getting a blend on a Space Marine, and it was a fully uncut video. There was no brush stroke left out, and that format seemed to resonate with you guys, so it got me thinking, what else could we do in that format? And painting a face was an idea I had, so we're gonna give that a shot today. And I'm a little bit concerned about my dumb head getting in the way and also me being out of focus. So to help with the hair, we're gonna slip on just a little bit of this. Oh, what's that? An exclusive Miniac black metal logo patch beanie? Oh my God! If you guys want to pick up this black metal logo beanie, it's available on my Patreon between the dates of May 10th and May 25th. You need to sign up as a Dark Wizard patron, and then you get it. All right, enough shilling, let's get to painting. Okay, so today we're painting Hemlock, which is a 28 mil, 32 mil scale figure, and her face is nothing special, and that's kind of by design. I don't want it to be overly dramatic or overly sculpted, because I want it to be a good representation for what you guys might be dealing with in your everyday normal painting. So we're gonna start with Citadel paint. I put some Kislev flesh down on the palette, and I'm also putting down some Screamer pink on the palette. I feel like Kislev flesh is just a little bit too yellow and not warm enough for my liking, or not pink enough rather, so I'm going to add a little bit of Screamer pink to it to get the right tone. And then I'm also going to add some Screaming Skull from Games Workshop for brightening it up later down the road. Now you might ask, why am I using Citadel paint as opposed to something like Scale 75? And I feel like with Citadel paint, the satin sheen of it really helps you to get the correct look for flesh tone. Flesh tone is typically kind of oily and shiny looking, and Scale 75 is very matte, which is great for things like leathers or rough cloths, but for like a face which has a little bit of a sheen to it, I think a satin paint range is a little bit better. So we're going with Citadel today. I'm gonna pop in just a little bit of pink. Okay. Too much paint in my paintbrush. Alright, and we're gonna start with some base coats here. We're working with some pretty thin paint over a white undercoat. Another reason why I think I'm preferring Citadel over Scale 75 is because I feel like with Citadel I'm more prone to get a nice smooth base coat because of that satin sheen. I feel like with the matte paint I might just get like these small micro textures, and on the rest of the model that's not that really big of a deal, but on the face I think it's probably a bigger deal, because you want the face to be nice and smooth and without blemish, unless you want the blemish there. Because it's the focal point for the miniature. So we're gonna start with some base coating. Now, she has an exposed neck and breasts, but we're only gonna paint the face today, but I am gonna put down some color all over for the initial base coat. But then we're gonna focus primarily on the face. To get maximum opacity, we're gonna need to do a few layers of paint here. Make sure you're not applying paint over wet paint and kind of peeling up layers and causing uneven texture. And one way you can prevent that is by drying intermittently with a hairdryer. So we're gonna do that right now, and then we'll start adding on another layer of paint. Now there can be a temptation with the hairdryer to blast it with heat and do it for a long time, but I warn you, especially with a pewter figure that has like a more of a capacity for heat, that will kind of mess up your paint if you apply it right away, because the residual heat on the model will dry the acrylic paint probably faster than you think it will, and then kind of give you the wrong idea about whether or not your paint layer is still dry and you can continue to manipulate it, when in actuality it's more dry than you think it is, and you cause problems. So just be aware of that when you're really painting with a hairdryer ever. Okay, I originally didn't mix up that much in my base flesh tone, so I'm gonna mix up the rest of the Kislev flesh with a little bit of pink. And now I'm gonna start adding in some of that Screaming Skull, which is just an off-white color. A little bit of yellow in it. And we're gonna retain some of our original base tone, and since we're adding in a little bit more paint, we're also gonna add in a little bit more water so we can stay at that nice thin opacity. We're really trying to prevent any kind of texture from building up where we don't want it to build up. And we'll start to apply some highlights. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you're probably pretty familiar with where I'm going to apply highlights. I'm going to apply this initial pass to the top of the forehead, the tops of the cheeks, top of the lip, and also a little bit to the chin. And we're going to do this for a while, because you don't get maximum opacity with this thin of an acrylic paint right away. You need to do it a few times to get the right amount of opacity. And you're going to get to see it all in glorious 1080p detail. I think one thing that's important to discuss is why use an off-white with yellow in it as opposed to something like just pure white. And there's a few reasons for it. One reason is something that I learned in a face painting class that I took at Adepticon, I think in 2017, was that the face can be broken down into zones. And this is something I hadn't heard of until taking this class. And those zones are 3 in number. Why am I speaking like a wizard? They are 3 in number, and in number 3 they shall be. No, the face is broken down into 3 zones in a lot of artistic subjects, and that is the top zone, which is yellowy, the middle zone, which is reddish, and then the bottom zone, which is blue. And the reasoning for busting it up this way is because the top of the forehead is kind of reflecting the warmth of the sun. The mid-tone, or the mid area of your face, the cheeks and the nose, that's where the blood vessels are most obvious. So that's where you get that red warmth from. And then finally the bottom part, the chin area and whatnot, is a reflection of the earth below. So that's why they kind of break it up that way. Okay. We're gonna add some more Screaming Skull and continue our very subtle highlighting, which is very interesting to watch. I know. You don't even need to comment down below how interesting this is to watch. Trust me, I think it is incredibly interesting. Now, coming in with a brighter highlight, we're going to cover up pretty much like close to 90% of what we just did with a brighter color. With a brighter color, excuse me. Just slowly intensifying this highlight. Now, something I want to admit to you guys is that I've had to practice painting faces for this video because I had something of an epiphany, and that epiphany was that I'm pretty shit at painting faces. So I practiced a little bit on a different character's head, and also I practiced on this lady 2 times. So this will be the 3rd time that I've painted her face. Let me tell you, painting this eyeball that's covered by that bang is not easy. It is not easy. And I will fail many times. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm kind of an impatient painter, so I'm gonna mix some more Screaming Skull into the original base tone so we can keep this party moving. Now, one thing I used to do a lot when I was painting faces in the past is that I would highlight the entire jawline with a color pretty close to the maximum highlight. And I think the jawline needs to get a little bit of definition, but the highlight should not be the same brightness as the forehead, for instance. So one thing I learned in this kind of experimenting and learning phase was that I should tone down my jawline highlight. Maybe the chin can stay fairly bright, not as bright as the forehead, but fairly bright. And the jawline needs to be reduced overall. Okay, starting to develop a highlight. Now she does have an eyelid, an upper eyelid on this not obscured eye. That's obvious, but I don't see a whole lot of value in applying layer after layer to that eyelid. I'll just hit it with the maximum highlight, or close to the maximum highlight, when we get to that point. It's so small, you're not really going to develop much of a blend on that eyelid. Alright, I can tell that we're getting a little bit thicker now that we keep adding more Screaming Skull. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more water, just so we can go nice and slowly. The kind of face we're shooting for here is the kind of face you'd paint on like your skirmish miniatures. So if you have like 100 Imperial Guard to paint, you're not gonna paint their faces like this. It would just take too long. But if you got like a team of like 8 dudes and you can spend a little bit more time on their faces, this is what I would do. I always forget about this side of the face. The forgotten side. Now at a certain point, I'm just gonna use pure Screaming Skull. Some water on my palette here, and some Screaming Skull. Water it down probably way too much. And start to highlight some more. There's a possibility at some point that we might get a little bit too pasty looking, but that's okay. We'll adjust that. When it occurs. Okay, we started to develop a highlight. Now I kind of want to start blocking in the other parts of the face before we go too gung-ho here. So, the colors we're going to use are Abaddon Black, but we're not going to use pure Abaddon Black. I want to block in her eyes with like a dark gray color. And the reason why I want to use a dark gray color in this particular instance is because I want to kind of emulate eyeliner, which is like a hopeless desire, but eyeliner typically is you know, is dark, it's black. I don't want to use pure black because I feel like that'd be too stark. So I want to use a dark gray, and I'm going to block in the eyes with the dark gray. And then hopefully when I paint in the pupil and the iris, I can relieve that dark ring around the eye and it'll look a little bit like eyeliner or mascara. Eyeliner, I don't know what it is. I'm not a woman. Makeup, psh, I'm a man. While we're also doing this, I'm just gonna put a dark brownish red tone on the palette too. This is brown leather from scale 75. This is gonna help us to start to shade the face before we go too far with the highlights. You may ask, why are you doing the eyes now? Why didn't you do them earlier? That is a good question. I don't think it necessarily matters. You can do the eyes whenever you'd like to do them. Probably earlier the better, because you don't want to invest a lot of time in highlighting and shading the face only to mess it up when you try to do the eyes. Some people paint the eyes before they do anything with the face, and that's definitely something you could do. Now, just to help me visually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this hair white. You can paint it whatever color you want to paint it. I'm just going to paint it white just so I can see where the eye actually is. Oh, maybe painted it a little bit too much onto the skin tone here. Basically, I'm just covering up kind of the overpainting I just did to be able to get color into that little crevasse. One thing you might notice I'm doing too is that I'm pushing down my paintbrush, and then when I rotate it, I have a like a dagger sharp point right there, and that allows me to get really good accuracy. I think we can still fill in the eye a little bit more. Alright, now we're going to take some of this Screaming Skull, maybe add a little bit of white to it, because it is quite yellow. Okay, that was bad. We're going to repaint the eye dark gray and try again. All right, round two, fight. Okay, so now I have an eye, and it's got a little bit of a dark ring around it. I think we can go a little bit stronger with the white of the eye. All right, now let's see if we can get some white in here, which I've failed to do miserably. Okay, that's not too hard. The hard part is doing the iris. So we'll take some purple paint here just to kind of give her more of an interesting color. Thin it down a little bit. Paint a little dot. And it's okay at this point if you mess up a little bit. Because since we are kind of starting the eye process early, we can fix our mistakes. With a little bit of extra highlight. Alright, we're getting somewhere. She kind of looks a little bit derpy. I'm going to struggle to paint this eye for kind of a long time, so I'm just going to finish it and then come right back and then we'll finish the rest of the face.
2,000 years later.
Okay, what we're going to work on now that the eyes are kind of squared away is we're going to start to add some shadow to Hemlock's face. We're going to do that with a color called Brown Leather from Scale 75, and we're going to do it very gently with some water added here in a pretty thin glaze consistency. Because this stuff is pretty strong on top of the skin tone, which is pretty pale in the first place. Now, one thing I've heard in my face painting travels is that females have really soft features, and you want to be careful about how much shadow you add to their faces. And I think that's probably true, but at the same time, you do want to have some definition. Not that much definition, abort, on the face that differentiates the details that are important, such as the upper and bottom lip, the nose from the top of the brow, the bottom of the nose from the top lip, stuff like that. You want to define that stuff, maybe even right below the bottom lip. I think I'm dealing with paint that's a little bit too thinned out. All right, let's add some more here. And I fully intend with this process to add too much of this dark color and need to come back and trim it off. That's pretty normal for me when I do this. I think another important thing is having a hairline that separates the face from the hair. That's really important. Gives it nice definition. Okay, I think we could do a little bit more around the nose. She also has a line that separates her cheek from where her mouth muscles begin, and so we'll try to draw that in. It is pretty hard to see though on the sculpt, but it is there. And now that's an example of a line that is too strong, and we'll need to adjust that in the future. But that's okay. That's not hard to do. We'll stay there, and we'll see what happens. Sometimes when I'm highlighting and shading, it's a back and forth game. Sometimes it's like, okay, that was far too much, I need to reduce it. Sometimes, maybe in this case, I'm not sure if it's enough, and we'll just move on to the highlighting again to true up those lines to see if it was enough. And then if it wasn't, we'll just come back and do some more. There isn't really too much hard, cold step-by-steps that I go through when painting pretty much anything, so this is a reflection of that. Yeah, that's definitely, that line is way too strong. My girl looks like she's growing a little mustachio. Okay. I remember in the past I said I was going to wait for the bright highlights before I started highlighting this eyelid right here. Well, now's the time. Take your sword and fight. If you can name that reference in the comment section, you get 10 John bucks. Now, one thing while I'm highlighting the brow that I've always struggled with is that the forehead is not an entirely flat plane. The top is a bit rounded, so it typically gets more highlight than the rest of the face. But the brow sticks out as well too. You have muscles around the eyebrows that stick out. And typically stuff at this scale doesn't have that kind of detail sculpted in it. And so what I end up doing is like kind of edge highlighting the brow, or at least the eyebrow areas, to simulate that kind of that muscle right there. but I struggle because sometimes they can look like I'm giving my character like flesh-colored eyebrows. So you need to be really subtle with that highlight right over the eyebrows. On this side of the face, we don't need to be too subtle because that's where our maximum highlight is, so we can go pretty bright over here. But on the other side, where it's a little bit darker in shadow, we're gonna need to play it cool. Might need to mix up some more paint here. A little bit of flesh tone. Boys, it's hard to stay in focus. For an entire sesh of face painting. Now I like to pick out the nostrils, even if the detail isn't sculpted, so just like a little dot of color or highlight right next to the main part of the nose. And that kind of just gives you the impression that she has, you know, normal human features. I can't see what I'm doing right now, it's too dark. Dang you and your bangs, Hemlock. She's got kind of a duck lip thing going on here. Okay, now it looks like she's in a Got Milk commercial here. Alright, let's try that again. Okay, dress. You're gonna have to work with me. Now while I'm painting the lips, let's talk about lip color. For females, using a lip color is kind of forgiving because sometimes if you use a tone that's just a little bit more unnatural, you can just chalk it up to the fact that it's lipstick. For males, it's a little bit less forgiving. But what I found works and is an idea that I've stolen from Paul Norton, who's an heavy metal painter. Probably other people use it as well. Is that you want to leave the upper lip uncolored and put color on the bottom lip. Because whenever I seem to paint the upper and bottom lip, it looks like they have sausage lips. So, especially Hemlock, who has kind of a bottom lip that's like really kind of pouting out like that. Doing that and not the top can be a nice way to differentiate the lip color from the skin tone color, which is, you know, definitely something you need to consider because they are definitely different. Alright, now what I'm doing is I'm coming in with pure white. In this case, this is scale 75 white, and I'm popping down some real bright highlights. I want to get some more contrast in this face. One way you can do that is by going brighter on your highlights. One thing I'm still kind of concerned about is this area right here, where I kind of put in that highlight that separated the cheek from the above or below nose area. I think it's working out. You know, I think actually part of the sculpt, and you might be able to see this, is she has a line that runs to the her cheek to the side of her nose, which is that's a pretty prominent detail in larger sculpts. So defining that little pathway from the cheek to the side of the nose is pretty helpful. It looks pretty nice, I think. Again, I'm not the greatest face painter in the world, so take what I say with a grain of salt. How was your guys' day? Did you paint 1,000 minis? Because if you didn't, what the hell are you doing with your lives? Something I always neglect is the ears. Shout out to you, ears. I always forget you. Just a little pop of color. A little pop of color, that'll do you. A little dab. Oh no, okay. I think, see that? Earlier I was talking about having too strong of a chin highlight. I think that was a great example of one that was too strong. So I just ate my paint like the filthy animal that I am and kind of just feathered that out. I want to highlight down there by the chin. I just don't want it to be as strong as I normally do it. I typically make my chin highlights and my jawline highlights way too bright. Alright, I kind of want this to go up to pure white. And I really am focusing my attention mostly on one side of the face. And that's actually pretty normal, even when the face isn't obscured by hair. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll focus my highlights on one side of the face. And this is another kind of tip that I picked up from Ben Comments, because faces are just more interesting maybe when they're highlighted in a way that's not like flat or even across the board. So kind of picking one side to favor can kind of just give your face a little bit more motion, a little bit more dynamicism. I don't know if that's a word. More dynamics. Can really help just like sell maybe an emotion or a feeling, something like that, if half of the face is, you know, I'm not talking about half of the face being in shadow, but just, you know, one half being having a little bit more stronger of a highlight, like he's leaning toward a light source, you know? I think we can keep going brighter with the highlight. We just need to go slow, because you can't go too chunk too fast, or else the face just looks like. So we'll take our pretty thin paint here and just keep getting brighter and brighter. I don't want to take this white highlight all the way down to the chin. Same as the other side. She has that line on the cheek that connects it to the side of the nose. All of these things have names, but I'm stupid and don't know them, so I'm sorry. I want to start adding some tones. So earlier I mentioned how the face can break down into 3 zones. You have the upper area, which is yellow, which is why we use an off-white yellow highlight. You have the middle area, which is red, because that's where the skin is thinner and you can see more of the blood vessels. And you have the bottom area, which is blue, which is a reflection of the earth. So I want to start adding some more tones. One, to kind of liven up the skin color a little bit. But 2, to kind of reinforce this 3-zone idea. So we get some red ink here. water it down like a buttload, and then kind of glaze it into the cheek areas. This will serve to give the face a little bit more contouring, but also kind of liven it up a little bit because it's getting a little one-dimensional. I think I actually thinned my ink too much. Add a little bit more in there. A little dab will do ya. Make sure it's dry. And with that tiny addition of ink, I now have made her a clown. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna add some more water because apparently I strengthened it or just didn't get a good sense for how strong it was originally. And come over here and do the same thing. There really is a strong inclination to want to just ignore this side of the face entirely. I think I missed this skin tone right here, but I don't want to do that. All right, I also, while that paint dries, want to kind of paint the nose a little bit. You can't do too much of the red on the nose because what ends up happening is your character looks drunk. But a little bit of warmth on the nose helps. Maybe we can also put some. Let's just play it cool, Scott. We'll put some over here, where the face starts to go into shadow a little bit. And kind of just keep doing this until it's the intensity that we want. This part of the head over here is kind of like no man's land. I have no idea what to do with this. Okay, now another thing is that for the blue zone on the bottom of the face, it can be scary to use blue because the blue can counteract with the red in the flesh tone and create gray and then look like 5 o'clock shadow. So oftentimes when I'm doing a female face, I don't want her to look like a bearded lady. So I might use purple because sometimes purple can be misconstrued for maybe like makeup or something. Like I don't know who applies purple makeup to their chin, but you know, it's a more pleasing tone than maybe blue. And maybe I'm breaking rules here or something, but you know, give it a shot and see if you like it. If you don't like it, come back to me and tell me I'm an idiot. But this idea is all experimental. It's all subtle, I mean, anyway, so it's not like this is gonna change a drastic part of your miniature. You know, one thing I kind of missed with the shadow color here was painting under the chin, so we're gonna quick do that. Just give some much needed shape to the face. She has her head kind of leaning down a little bit, so it's kind of tough to sneak it in there, but we're gonna sneak it in there. That sounds illegal. All right, back to our perp skirt. Another reference. If you can get that, you get 15 John bucks. All right, we're gonna add a little bit more ink. That's probably, look, it's so much darker. Now what we could also do with this purple is kind of like paint her eye lids a little bit. To kind of make it like she applied some eyeshadow, I think it's called. You know, you can call it quits kind of whenever you want. I'm gonna keep going here. I think we're gonna start working on the bottom lip here, and we'll start with the Screamer pink we have on the palette from before, and we'll just add some white to it to get a pink tone. Maybe add some of the flesh color to it to make it not so different. And we'll start there. Maybe a little bit more Screamer pink, just so it's a little bit darker. And as mentioned earlier, we're only gonna paint the bottom lip, not the top lip. And this is kind of already looking like makeup, so in an attempt to, well, this was always my plan in the first place, but now we're gonna add some more white, and this is kind of gonna bring us more in line with the rest of the flesh color. We're gonna add some highlights. The top of her dress is really kind of messing with my mojo right now. Hemlock. Now, I don't want it to be that pink. I do want it to be pink, but I don't want it to be that different. Okay, we need some more white here. Operation White needs to rescue us. Okay, maybe some more white. And just like a bit more of that flesh tone. Oh, I think I might look too crazy. Yeah. Okay, we're nearing the end here. I think as one final thing, we're going to just pump the contrast a little bit more. So we'll take some of our Skull White here, or not Skull White, sorry, Scale 75 white, and we'll just continue to reinforce the areas that we want to enunciate. This eyelid, this particular side of the face, the cheeks, and the end of the nose. I don't think I got the other nostril very good, so let's try to do that. I'm shaking. Alright. I don't see enough definition in between the cheek area and the mouth area over here on this side. I'm gonna come in and try to define that a little bit more. Also, we got a little bit pasty with the highlight. So I'm gonna come in some of that original base tone and kind of bring that back into line. Also, the highlight on the upper lip here over on the left side of her face is lacking. We can even go a little bit brighter. Gotta come into it with a specific angle of the brush because it keeps hitting the top of her dress. She's got a little bit of a snarl, a little bit of a duck lip thing going on here, so highlighting that a little bit more, enunciating that particular facial feature. I'm gonna come in with some pretty thick white paint here to get this nostril to pop a little bit more. Or maybe not. Okay. Well guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments section below. If you like this kind of format, you can watch another format like this where I get a blend on a Space Marine's leg plate armor. That's kind of what you're into, creamy blends on Space Marines. I know that's what you're into. This subject of painting faces is such a big one. There are so many ways you can paint faces. There are different ethnicities that you can tackle, and they all have so much information that I have yet to learn in them. So this was kind of a fun foray into the subject of painting faces. Maybe in the future, when I've kind of figured more out about painting faces, I can make a more streamlined, edited video. But for now, this is what we're going to stick with. Again, if you guys want to pick up this hat, you can do it on my Patreon campaign by becoming a Dark Wizard in between the dates of May 10th and May 25th. If you like the channel and you want to support it, Patreon is one of the best ways, but also using my Amazon shopping affiliate link while shopping on Amazon, which you can find in the description, is also pretty helpful. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to